So the first question I would ask you is, when did you actually qualify as an Alexander teacher?
I think it was the end of 1935 or beginning of 1936, I'm not quite sure which.
And was that after a 3-year training?
Yes.
That was the standard at that time as well?
Yes, it was the standard.
And then after a while you started your own training course. When
Oh, I didn't start my own training course for a hell of a long time.
No?
I was working on my own part of the time. First of all, I worked with Alexander as his assistant. Then I was working on my own for some time up in Birmingham. And then I used to divide my time working for Alexander in London and in Birmingham part of the time. And then the war came. And so it rather put a stop to it.
I think you mentioned yesterday that you worked in New York as well, didn't you?
Oh yes, I have worked in New York.
Much later than that?
That's much later, yes. Yes. Yes.
So you were doing a fair amount of travelling between London and Birmingham and various
yes, I
places?
did certainly much. Yes.
When did you start your training course?
I started in 1932. In September, I suppose, 32. And...
no, 32 wouldn't be right, would it?
Yes. 1932.
No, you're getting me my question wrong. What I meant was when you started your own training course.
Oh, my own training course?
That was right.
That's a long time ago. That was in... I've forgotten now. When did Alexander die?
55.
55. I started in 56.
In 56, so almost immediately after?
No, well, some months after.
Could you tell something about why you started the training course and what sort of difficulties you ran into in the early days of the training course?
I started it in order to maintain the teaching of the Alexander technique. I ran into all sorts of difficulties. Some of which had to do with the organization of 16 Ashley Place, where I took over Alexander's old consulting rooms.
Yes.
And I was not entirely in charge of the whole business. It was Alexander's brother was really partly in charge, though he was not a teacher of the Alexander technique. I was...
Yes, that wouldn't be Alexander because he died some years earlier, didn't he?
Yes, yes. So I did not have an entirely free hand in the matter. And then I started to get a training course together.
Did Alexander make any provisions for himself how to maintain the technique after his death, or how to continue running training courses?
No, he didn't. No. I don't think he was particularly interested. Nor I think was he particularly hopeful. But as I say, I don't think he was particularly interested.
Was that in training courses as a whole he wasn't particularly interested?
I don't think so, not particularly, no. No, I think it was a method of replacing the financial income that he got up to 1929 when students, private pupils tended to fall off. I think he started to replace them with students. I was in the first training course.
You were in the very first one?
I was in the very first training course, but I joined it only a year after it started.
Was that the one Lucy Westphal was in as well?
Yes.
Because I read her book some years back.
Yes, good book.
Very interesting book, yes.
Yes. Yes, I was there. Of course, I'd had lessons off and on since I was a small boy of 10. So I suppose I had more experience of the Alexander technique than many of the others.
How did you manage to get lessons so early in life?
I was taken to Alexander by my parents in 1920. They realized that I was a very discoordinated little boy, and it was my mother, I think, who, having read Alexander, one of Alexander's books, in fact, Alexander's first book, I think, thought that this might be the answer. So I was taken down to London and given lessons, which I resented rather sharply. I thought I was all right.
Did Alexander have any ideas about that your parents ought to have lessons as well at that time?
Well, my parents did have lessons. Actually, my father, who had a very bad back, he was sent down first to see this. My father was a doctor, and Alexander, he was a very good mimic, Alexander, by the way, very good indeed. And he sometimes, for our benefit, he would copy my father entering his consulting room to have a lesson from this quack. And Mother, he wasn't at all pleased with this. You see, he was an orthodox doctor, and he didn't think it was really right for him to go around seeking health benefit from a quack.
So that was your father's description rather than Alexander's?
That was Alexander, he was mimicked for our benefit, the students' benefit, my father coming in to face this quack, you see. And it was very well done indeed, extremely well done. But my father was a very intelligent man, and he very quickly saw that Alexander's, what he had to say was important. And he was a very enthusiastic follower of Alexander until his death, many, many years later.
As you said, when you had lessons as a 10-year-old, you somewhat resented it.
Yes.
What made you actually decide to train as an Alexander teacher?
Well, I went on having lessons off and on during holidays, right away through my school days, and it grew on me.
As simple as that, it just grew on you?
Yes. I began to see it as important, and also I began to see it as useful for my own well-being. I was always keen on games of one sort and another.